Last weekend, we talked about my overall thoughts of weekend 1 of the Modern Warfare beta, and today, now that we're approaching the end of said beta, I thought that I'd give it another go this time around, but with the entirety of it. Weekend 1 and weekend 2 thoughts in the book. If you haven't played it already or haven't played enough for your liking, it's not over just yet. You can still jump on until 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time tomorrow to play, and it may get extended. I'm not really sure, but we're doing this second follow-up thoughts today because tomorrow we do launch into the final operation for Black Ops 4, Operation Dark Divide. Weird as it is that it's on a Monday and not a Tuesday, but I wanted to get my thoughts out there on the beta before we jump right back into covering other new content in the Call of Duty world. So that said, let's talk about my thoughts on the beta. So far from weekend 1, there were a bit of conflicting feelings, truth be told. I really enjoyed a lot of it. I loved the gunplay, I loved the look of the game, I loved the audio, minus the footsteps because those were pretty tough to hear at times. I loved the new load-in animations and such, but there were a few glaring problems that I had with the beta, some game side, and some just how people played it. The first thing was that pacing was definitely off. It was a rather campy experience at the very beginning. I'm still basing this aspect off of weekend 1, and we'll get to why in just a second because I haven't really experienced it as much over the past couple of days, but weekend 1 saw a ton of corner campers, claymore refilling abuse, mounted head glitchers watching spawn points or just outside of spawn points, and so on. Whatever it was, the game felt like it punished mobility in a sense between the lines of sight and time to kill. I knew this wasn't something that could be fixed with a simple patch, and that was something that came down to some of the base design flaws as a rushing player would see them, but a lot of that in the eyes of many could have been fixed by the minimap. And admittedly, whenever they added in the minimap compromise, I thought that it helped out greatly in the way that it was introduced in 6v6 and 10v10. Its introduction did for me what I wanted it to do and what I used the minimap for, to see that map flow and general relativity of my teammates. I don't necessarily need to see red dots on the minimap to know where enemies are. If I'm the only one around me on my team, I can pretty much accurately still predict the flow of spawns and where players may be coming from. It's just a simple seesaw equation. If your team is on one side, chances are the other team's on the other. So if you're not with your team, you're likely behind enemy lines and should probably keep your guard up. So the minimap did help out a little bit, but additionally, the other huge glaring problem overall that we mentioned in the last review were the spawns. I had an absolute miserable time with a lot of the spawns, and it came down to two factors that we discussed in that last video. The fact that I thought the logic needed some reworking and that there needed to be more spawn points. I felt like with a combination of spawn logic and lack of spawn points, it felt a bit easier to spawn trap than ever before. And granted, it is the beta. This is what betas are used for, to evaluate real-time scenarios while the mass populace are testing it out for the studios. That way things can be adjusted and worked on before the game is certified and pressed gold, like it will be here in the upcoming few weeks before it's put to disc and sent out to platforms for final verification ahead of the game's launch. But spawn logic came down to what I believe was that fly-in mechanic where it would pick a set spawn point but then hover over and give you a bird's eye view of the battlefield for a good 2 to 3 seconds, which in Call of Duty time is a lot of time. In that time, you could have, one, gotten away from a player who may turn the corner and see you spawn, or you could have gotten your gun up to fight said player. The delay seemed just a little bit unnecessary to me, and in my opinion, disrupted the flow of the game to the point where it could be punishing and there was nothing you could do about it. But that was all just a hunch. That was last week though. Those were my glaring concerns. We talked about more, yes, but I won't bore you with the previous thoughts and what we already discussed, but I wanted to set the landscape for how this overall experience was, not just weekend 2. That said, going into weekend 2, I was excited to jump back on. Black Ops 4 and Blackout can be still fun in some capacity, but as with every new thing, even if you get burnt out after playing with it for a bit, the thrill of it when returning to normalcy is something you do miss. But I was excited to jump into the beta for weekend 2 again, but this time I consciously told myself that I'd have to change my playstyle and how I approach the game. Last week with weekend 1, I approached it as I did with any other Call of Duty game that I've flourished in, and as I did with the reveal events where many other players had the same mentality and gameplay approach as mine, so it worked and it flowed well. But I just needed to change and not be so rush heavy. Initially, the first 2 days were still some of those main concerns with spawns and pacing of the game, but while I adjusted to the pace of myself, it still wasn't thrilling in the sense of, oh my God, I can't wait to no life this game come launch. It wasn't that same experience as I'd had in previous years while having a good piece of the pie in front of me pre-launch, but it was enough to still have a good time. Weekend 1, I was definitely struggling to get things like a VTOL, which admittedly is just 8 kills, simply because I was too combat happy. I wanted to be in the action at all times and then, therefore, just ran in like a chicken with its head cut off. When I slowed down my play, whenever I was a bit more methodical, not necessarily campy, but playing a bit smarter and trying to read, then react to the situations, not just react and then try to dictate the play like a super soldier or Rambo, I was doing better at that point. I slowed myself down, and while it may not have been the most action-packed time like I could have had in previous years, it worked. So yes, adjusting myself was definitely key. But I genuinely think that the turning point for me was Ground War. Friday night's surprise edition of Ground War, we knew it was going to be coming as of Saturday this weekend, but it went live a little early. But that, I think, was the turning point. Having played 20v20 at the reveal event for Modern Warfare's MP, I'll be brutally honest, I didn't enjoy that experience there that I had at all. Maybe it was the world-class players that I was up against that just immediately knew how to run an insane spawn trap, but I just couldn't get the hang of that, and it made for some less than ideal footage, some of which you've never seen here on the channel because it just wouldn't be worth putting it up with so many deaths. But admittedly, when I heard that 32v32 was going to be in the beta, I was a bit skeptical, but my word, it plays entirely different than I had imagined. It plays well, in my opinion. This changed my entire outlook on the beta, and since it's dropped, I haven't wanted to do anything other than play Ground War. And I'm not talking just about play Ground War in Modern Warfare, where I'm like, I'll jump on play Modern Warfare for a little bit while the beta is around. I'm talking in general. I have a move coming up to a new apartment, and I have so much to do, but in my mind, I'm just thinking to myself, how can I push this back, everything that I need to do, so I can just make more time to play Ground War before it's gone? I haven't had this much drive for MP in forever. And sure, that's, yes, cliche, people say that every single year, but for a pure MP mode, dude, I seriously haven't cared like this in a while. Black Ops 4, if you guys watch the channel, you probably know that a lot of the gameplay that we do is Blackout. I've played MP. Last week, I played a little bit with it because I was being a supporting cast member on somebody's stream. We played a little bit then, but outside of that, I've probably played like a couple of matches each start of the operation. I just haven't played MP and Black Ops 4 in a long time, but this is something that I really want more. I haven't had a yearning like this for a long time. I love Ground War. And like we mentioned in yesterday's video, it's got something for everyone. Whether or not you want to be that rusher always in the action, you absolutely can be. If you want to be that stay-at-home sniper, you can be. And if you want to be that guy that annoys everybody with a tank up on the ridgeline, well, unfortunately, you can be. I will say that as much as I love my time on this so far, it's been an absolutely tremendous time. How many nukes I've choked, I'm actually starting to get really sad at that. There are a few things fundamentally that I think could be worked on. The first thing comes down to something we've seen, well, already talked about, spawns. Probably the biggest thing that I hope get worked on within Ground War. While for the most part, you're not too painfully spawn trapped and there's enough area around the game that it'll read it well enough to give you a few seconds of heads up before a gunfight, there certainly are areas, like the warehouses overlooking the mid-courtyard and C-flag, that there are plenty of times that you can watch a player spawn in the same room as you. You can even in some cases have them spawn on you, directly behind you, or if you're far enough back, you can watch them spawn in front of you, directly in front. It'd honestly be an easy nuke streak farm if they keep spawning there each time and can't turn around fast enough, but that's something that definitely could use some work. Another that I have minimal gripes with overall, but I did have one scenario where I was like, that shouldn't happen, is that squad spawning. It's a really cool feature, especially for this with how big the map is, but I hope they get rid of the issues that sometimes arise when you spawn in that, like this clip, you can fall to your death. That one wasn't too pretty. Additionally, I'm not so sure how likely it will be, but I'd like to see maybe a little bit less linear play in 32v32. What I mean by this is that you end up having your flag locations pretty much all right in a straight line in the middle of the map, and therefore it kind of reduces that tug-of-war effect. You end up having A and E on both sides where you spawn, which are very far out, but then you have this huge gap of space, then B, C, and D all almost in a straight line in mid-map. So if you end up maybe, say, just shifting that 90 degrees where you have B and D between A and E and C, where it's just something you have that larger tug of war, I think that could really help with a lot more map flow and a lot more spread out play between all of that map, because there is definitely a lot of dead zones within the map that we have right now. You have people that are in the way back with those snipers that aren't going to move, and that's totally fine. Then you have a large number of players, probably about 30, 40 players at a time, all within that little vicinity of that, again, B, C, and D warehouses. So that kind of stuff could alter the gameplay for better or for worse. We have no idea, but I'm hoping that not every 32v32 map is like this, where it's flag, huge gap, flags, huge gap, other spawn. The final thing that I'll close out this little review is something that I was worried about from the very beginning, that being seeing too much. For betas in the past, it's been kind of hit or miss. Infinity Ward's last beta of Infinite Warfare was a demo more than anything. The game was literally pressed to gold and certified, ready to go before the beta even went live. So this was something that, having seen a beta this time frame, a little bit more relative to when betas would actually happen in preparation for full launch, I was cool with it, but I also was kind of nervous that we'd end up seeing too much. But having seen some leaked stuff from the game files, having seen what we see right now within the beta, I think I'm okay with it. I think that this is actually pretty good, because yes, we can see things like weapons, but there is so much that we can't see. And that might not even be the full weapon list, to be fair, but there's still so much that we don't know about. We had a handful of maps spread out between 2v2, 6v6, 10v10, and 32v32, but we have so many more things like other maps that we haven't seen, other modes. We haven't seen the campaign in almost any capacity outside of, say, that trailer. There were some leaks that, yes, did happen, but if you don't dig too far into those, I'm certainly not going to, because I really want to experience it firsthand. We haven't seen anything about Spec Ops. We don't know anything about the challenges that we'll see in game, both for, say, weapons or just overall soldier challenges. We haven't seen anything in terms of what rank progression will be like. There's still that rumor that there's no prestige system, so we have no idea how that's going to work. We don't have the full weapon gunsmith. That's something that's absolutely massive, and so on and so forth. So on top of that, we also don't have things that are already in the game right now. Things like the Specialist Killstreak package, we don't have that available in the beta. I can't remember if there's support packages, if that's going to be a thing. I don't remember if that's ever been confirmed or if that's something that I'm just thinking I heard. But there's so much stuff that we still haven't seen, and still so much reserved for the full launch of the game, that can get players excited for the upcoming month and that little bit of downtime we have before we jump into everything. So I'm happy with how the beta ended up, especially after this second weekend. There, of course, are still those main issues that I have, but again, there's never going to be a time where I'm going to rate a Call of Duty game a perfect 10 out of 10. At the very best, I think that Black Ops 2, my gold standard personally, that was probably an 8 or 9. So are there things that can be worked on? Absolutely. Did I enjoy what I had time to play with this weekend and last? Absolutely, once I got the hang of it. But I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. I wanted to give my thoughts and feedback here on this and let you guys know a little bit of where I'm at here with this. I'm having fun with it right now. So love to get your thoughts and feedback. What do you guys think here of this? If you guys disagree, agree, whatever it is, your opinions are totally valid and I respect each and every one of them. But that said, let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare as we ramp up towards the full launch of the game. Of course, we do have Black Ops 4 stuff as of tomorrow, but I'm excited for the full launch of the game and I'm going to try and experience every last second I can here this beta. But if you enjoyed that stuff, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best place to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. But let's end out of the way. Thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.